Hanako-San.
It happened to a girl named Aiko. She was just an ordinary high school student in Tokyo. Aiko wasn't the type to be easily scared. She liked horror movies, played with Ouija boards, and laughed at the superstitions her friends believe in. But there's one thing that even she couldn't laugh off. The legend of Hanako-San. You've heard about Hanako-San, right? The ghost of the little girl who haunts school bathrooms. You knock on the third stall of the girls' bathroom and ask Hanako-San, "Are you there?" And if she answers, well, you'd better hope she doesn't. The thing is, most people think it's just a silly game, a dare, a story passed around like some urban legend. They think it's harmless. But Aiko found out that Hanako-San isn't just a story. It started innocently enough, as these things often do. Aiko was with her friends after school one day, lingering in the hallways while the sunlight faded. The school was nearly empty. Everyone else had already gone home, but Aiko and her friends were waiting for a club meeting. To pass the time, someone brought up the topic of urban legends. They talked about the usual stuff, spirits, curses, and haunted places around the school. And then someone brought up Hanako-San.
You know, they say our school's bathroom on the third floor is haunted.
Aiko's friend, Rika, said with a sly smile.
Third stall, just like this story.
Aiko scoffed.
Oh, come on. That's just a dumb rumor to scare kids. Hanako-San isn't real.
Rika grinned.
If it's not real, then why don't you try it?
The challenge was set. Aiko, never one to back down, shrugged.
Fine, I'll do it. But when nothing happens, I don't want to hear any excuses.
The group made their way to the third floor. The hallway was empty, the silence thick and heavy. The school always felt different after hours, like the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. When they reached the girls' bathroom, Aiko pushed open the door. It creaked like something out of a horror movie. The tiles were chipped, the mirrors smudged. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, eerie shadows.
Come on, Aiko,
Rika whispered, her voice trembling despite her smile.
Third stall?
Aiko rolled her eyes and stepped toward the stall. The third one from the left, the door was slightly ajar, hanging loosely on its hinges. It looked just like any other stall, unremarkable in every way, but there was something off about it. Something Aiko couldn't quite place.
Okay, here we go.
Aiko muttered, raising her hand to knock. Her friends watched from the entrance, giggling nervously. Aiko knocked 3 times, her knuckles echoing against the wood.
Hanako-San,
She called, her voice mocking.
are you there?
Silence. Nothing happened. Aiko turned to her friends, smirking.
See? Told you it was just.
Then, from the stall behind her, there was a soft, muffled whisper.
Yes, I'm here.
Aiko froze. The smile died on her lips. Her heart pounded in her chest. She slowly turned back to the stall, her breath catching in her throat. The door, which had been slightly ajar, was now completely shut.
Aiko, let's go.
One of her friends stammered, her voice shaking with fear. But Aiko was rooted to the spot, her eyes locked on the stall door. She felt a cold chill creeping up her spine, like invisible fingers tracing her skin. She didn't want to believe it. It had to be a trick. One of her friends must have pulled a prank, right? She reached out, her hand trembling, and slowly pushed the door open. There was no one inside. The stall was empty. Aiko blinked, her mind racing to make sense of what had just happened. She could still feel that eerie presence, the cold, oppressive weight in the air. Suddenly, the door to the bathroom slammed shut behind them. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into near darkness. Aiko's friends screamed, scrambling for the door, but it wouldn't budge. They pounded on it, yanking at the handle, but it was as though someone, was holding it shut from the outside.
Aiko, open it. Get it open.
Rika shrieked, her voice hysterical, but Aiko couldn't move. She was staring at the mirrors now, where something was beginning to take shape. It was faint at first, like a smudge or a shadow, but it grew clearer by the second. The figure of a young girl standing just behind Aiko in the reflection. She wore a tattered school uniform, her hair long and matted, her face pale as death, and her eyes were black holes, endless pits of nothingness.
Aiko.
The voice was inside her head now, a whisper that crawled under her skin. She spun around, but there was no one there, just her friends, still screaming, still trying to open the door.
Aiko.
Rika screamed, grabbing her arm.
We need to get out of here.
Aiko snapped out of her daze and rushed to help, pulling with all her might. The door finally gave way, and they tumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. The lights in the bathroom flickered back on, steady and bright, as though nothing had happened. The girls ran out of the school without looking back. None of them spoke about what happened. Not that day, and not the next, but Aiko couldn't forget. The image of that girl in the mirror haunted her every time she closed her eyes. The voice that whispered her name, it stayed with her, following her everywhere she went. Days passed, and Aiko's friends seemed to move on. They convinced themselves it was all a prank or a trick of the light, but Aiko knew better. She could feel Hanako-San. At night, she heard faint footsteps in her room, the soft creak of the closet door opening, the whispering. It wasn't long before the others noticed Aiko's change. She started skipping school, barely sleeping, becoming a shadow of herself. Rika tried to check on her, but Aiko wouldn't talk about it. She just sat there, staring at nothing, as if she was listening to something only she could hear. Then, one day, Aiko didn't show up at school at all. Rika went to her house, but her mother said she hadn't seen her since the night before. Panic spread, and a search was organized. They looked everywhere, but Aiko was gone, vanished without a trace. A few days later, Rika went back to the school. She hadn't meant to go near the bathroom, but something drew her there. Call it morbid curiosity, or maybe something more. The door to the third stall was slightly ajar, and on the mirror, written in something dark and sticky, were the words, "I'm still here." Rika swore she could hear faint laughter, and as she backed away, she caught a glimpse of something in the reflection. A girl standing just behind her. The search for Aiko was eventually called off. But some say that late at night, if you go to the third stall in that bathroom and knock 3 times, you'll still hear her whisper. And if you're unlucky enough to catch a glimpse in the mirror, you might see more than just Hanako-San. You might see Aiko, too.
The Sting.
Paul Ashby had been running scams for over a decade. He was meticulous, quick on his feet, and careful to never leave a trace. Over the years, he'd stolen thousands from gullible retirees, desperate single parents, and anyone naive enough to fall for his schemes. He thought he was untouchable, smarter than the police, more slippery than the law. But he had no idea the net was closing in on him. A week ago, Paul received an email from someone who claimed to be a potential business partner. The man, Alan, was looking for a new opportunity and had heard about Paul's success in various investment deals. The message was vague but enticing. Alan had a contact that owed him $50,000 in cash, but wanted to transfer it through a trusted third party, Paul. In exchange, Paul could keep 10% of the money, no strings attached. It was too good to pass up. Paul felt his heart pound with excitement as he replied, eager to seal the deal. 2 days later, Paul found himself standing in front of a nondescript house on the outskirts of town. The deal was simple: meet inside, collect the cash, and leave. No banks, no wire transfers, just cold, hard cash. The house was supposed to be vacant, Alan had said, but there was something about it that made Paul uneasy. He had always trusted his gut, and today it was screaming that something was off. Paul ignored the feeling. $50,000 was on the line. The door creaked as Paul entered the house. It was dimly lit, the air stale as if no one had lived there for years. He took a few steps inside and felt the weight of silence pressing down on him. The room was sparsely furnished, with nothing but a dusty couch and a single table in the center of the room. A black duffel bag sat on the table, clearly filled with something substantial. Paul's eyes widened. This was it, the money. His heart raced as he walked towards it. Suddenly, the sound of a door closing echoed from behind him. Paul spun around, his hand instinctively reaching into his pocket for the small knife he always carried. His eyes darted around the room, trying to identify the source of the noise. Before he could react, a man stepped into the light. He wasn't alone. 2 others followed him, their faces hidden in shadow.
So what are you doing here tonight?
The man in front said, his voice cold and steady.
So you're here to steal from innocent people, huh?
Paul's blood ran cold. Something was wrong. He turned back towards the bag, realizing too late that this was a trap.
I think there has been some mistake,
Paul stammered, taking a step back.
What do you mean, mistake? You're here to take $50,000 from an old man.
The man replied, his voice unflinching.
We are a unit that documents scammers and people with ill intentions over the innocent people. And if you won't answer our questions, we will have to call the police on you right now.
Paul's mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He'd been so careful, so precise. How had they caught him? Who was this man, and why was he just standing there, staring at him like a predator cornering its prey?
Look, I don't know what you're talking about.
Paul tried again, his voice cracking.
I'm just here to pick up some money. That's all.
The man smirked.
You think you're smart, don't you? Scamming people for years and getting away with it. But today, you're done.
The 2 other men stepped forward, hands reaching out to grab him. Paul panicked, his mind spinning out of control. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but he was trapped. Without thinking, Paul's hand clenched around the handle of the knife in his pocket. He yanked it out, his movements quick and erratic. His breath came in sharp gasps as he waved the knife wildly in front of him.
Stay back!
Paul screamed, his voice high and frenzied.
Don't come any closer!
The men hesitated, their expressions shifting from confidence to concern. For a moment, there was silence. Paul's heartbeat pounded in his ears, drowning out everything else. And then everything happened at once. One of the men lunged, and Paul reacted instinctively. The blade in his hand slashed through the air, connecting with the man's arm. Blood sprayed across the floor, and the man cried out in pain. Paul didn't stop. The fear that had been gnawing at him was replaced by a primal, uncontrollable rage. He slashed again, this time at the second man. The knife sank into his chest, and Paul felt the sickening crunch of bone beneath the blade. He pulled it out, blood splattering across his face, but there was no time to think. The first man was already on him, grappling for control. Paul's mind was a blur as he stabbed over and over, until the man's grip loosened and his body went to limp. The room was deathly quiet now. The only sound was Paul's ragged breathing and the distant echo of dripping blood hitting the floor. Paul stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring down at the bodies sprawled out around him. His mind raced to make sense of what had just happened, but nothing came. His hands were slick with blood, the knife trembling in his grip. He had killed them, they had set a trap, and he had killed them. Panic flooded his veins. He needed to get out now. Paul stumbled towards the door, nearly tripping over the lifeless bodies as he went. The knife was still in his hand, sticky with blood, but he couldn't let go. It was the only thing keeping him grounded in this nightmare. Outside, the cool night air hit his face like a slap. He gasped, his lungs burning with every breath. The world around him felt surreal, distant, like he was watching everything through a fog window. He had to get out of here, but where would he go? The police would come soon. They had probably been watching the house this whole time. It was a sting operation. After all, they had set him up. Paul's legs moved on their own, carrying him down the empty street. His thoughts spiraled out of control. He was supposed to be smarter than this. He was supposed to be in control. But now everything is falling apart. As Paul stumbled through the deserted neighborhood, flashes of the blood-soaked room flickered in his mind. He could still feel the warm spray of blood on his skin, the weight of the knife in his hand. It was all so vivid, so real. And yet it didn't feel real. None of this felt real. The street lights cast long shadows on the pavement, twisting and warping like something out of a nightmare. Paul blinked, trying to clear his vision, but the shadows remained. They seemed to move, crawling towards him, growing larger and darker with every step he took. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that someone or something was following him. The air around him was thick with tension, pressing down on his chest until he could barely breathe. Paul's thoughts raced, his mind unraveling as paranoia set in. What if the man he killed weren't really dead? What if they were still watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike? He spun around, knife in hand, but the street was empty. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic, far away from where he stood. He had to keep moving. He couldn't stop, not now. Paul's legs carried him further into the night, but he had no idea where he was going. The streets blurred together, every house looking the same, every shadow a reminder of what he had done. His mind was a whirlpool of fear and confusion. He couldn't think straight. He couldn't breathe. Suddenly, a car's headlights flashed across him, and Paul froze. The vehicle slowed as it approached, and for a moment, he was paralyzed with fear. Was it the police? Were they coming for him? The car passed without stopping, but the moment it was gone, Paul's panic exploded. He sprinted down the street, heart hammering in his chest. He didn't know where he was going, didn't care. All that mattered was getting away from this place, away from the scene of the crime. He could still see their faces, the men he had killed. Their lifeless eyes, their blooded bodies. They would never leave him, he would never escape them. Paul stumbled to a stop, his body shaking with exhaustion and fear. He was lost in the streets, lost in his mind. He had thought he was invincible. He had thought he could outsmart anyone. But now, standing alone in the darkness, Paul realized the truth. He had trapped himself. There was no escape. Not from the police, not from the guilt, not from the madness clawing at his mind. As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, Paul stood on the edge of a bridge, looking down at the cold, dark water below. His hands were still stained with blood, his clothes soaked with sweat and fear. He could hear sirens in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. They were coming for him. It was only a matter of time. Paul's grip tightened on the knife in his hand. He had no way out, no plan, no escape. So without hesitation, he jumped and reached the bottom of the bridge. As well as the end of his life, scamming people is never something that you will get away every time. There is always someone that's 2 steps ahead of you.
Crazy Boy 69.
In the early days of social media, there was little awareness of the dangers lurking behind seemingly innocent interactions. In 2016, an account with the username CrazyBoy69 appeared on multiple online platforms. At first glance, it seemed like just another online safety advocate sharing posts warning about the dangers of child predators masquerading as children online. The posts were sharp and direct, reminding parents to monitor their children's online activities. They were filled with grim statistics and stories of close calls, cases where online predators had been caught before they could do real harm. These posts were accompanied by generic images of concerned parents, blurred faces, and news clips about internet safety. Nothing about this initial content raised any red flags. The account quickly gained a following. Parents, educators, and even some cybersecurity professionals shared the posts, applauding the work CrazyBoy69 was doing. People commented that the account was providing a valuable public service. But something strange began happening. Within a year, the tone of the account started to shift. It started innocuously enough. CrazyBoy69 began to post images of a child. The posts didn't seem overly alarming at first. The child was always pictured smiling, often playing outdoors or sitting at a kitchen table doing homework. The account claimed that this was the owner's child, a young boy named Alex. This added a personal touch to the previously impersonal warnings. As a parent, the captions often began, "I know how important it is to keep our children safe online." These posts featured hashtags like VigilanteParent and Protect Our Children, rallying the online community to continue safeguarding their kids from digital dangers. However, something was off about the images of Alex. Several keen-eyed followers noticed that the child didn't seem real. The skin was unnaturally smooth, the smile always just a bit too perfect, the eyes glassy, as if the life behind them had been digitally erased. Online sleuths quickly identified that the images were AI-generated, a deepfake created using software designed to mimic human features. Alex wasn't real. At first, this revelation led to confusion. Why would an account so dedicated to child safety post fake images of a child? Many assume that Crazy Boy 69 was simply trying to protect their real child's identity. In a way, it seemed clever, if somewhat unsettling. The explanation, however, didn't hold for long. As 2019 rolled around, the account took a darker turn. The AI-generated images of Alex began to mutate. The face became less human with each post. At first, it was subtle, a slightly crooked smile or eyes that didn't quite align. But soon the changes became more pronounced. Alex's face would stretch unnaturally, his head too large for his body. His limbs were elongated, making him appear monstrous in some posts. What really set the internet community on edge, though, were the shoes. Without explanation, Alex was almost always depicted wearing knee-high, glossy leather high-heeled boots in every post. It didn't matter whether the image was of him playing in the park, sitting at a desk, or running down a suburban street. The boots were a constant, their presence wholly inappropriate and unnerving for a child character. Comments flooded in, asking the account to explain. Why was Alex wearing these boots? Why did his face keep warping into this unsettling, grotesque image of a child? Crazy Boy 69 remained silent, offering no explanation. Then the account started making more blatant alterations to the child's photos. One image depicted Alex with no mouth, another with eyes that were pitch-black voids. The more the internet questioned these increasingly disturbing images, the more Crazy Boy 69 doubled down, posting them at a faster rate. Then came the video that truly sent shockwaves through the online community. In the summer of 2021, Crazy Boy 69 posted a video with no caption. The video featured a man, clearly in his 50s, dressed in an oversized schoolboy uniform. His gray hair was slicked back, his face clean-shaven but creased with age, as he played the role of a young boy. He was shown riding a school bus, skipping awkwardly around a playground, and laughing too loudly while playing hopscotch. At one point, the man sat on a swing set, rocking back and forth, his boots, identical to the ones Alex had always worn, shining in the midday sun. The video was beyond unsettling. The man's behavior was an exaggerated parody of a child, his movements jerky, his laugh forced and hollow. Yet it wasn't the video's contents alone that frightened viewers. It was the way it was filmed. The video had the unmistakable sheen of a home movie. The camera shook slightly, as though someone was filming it handheld, and the eerie silence, broken only by the man's exaggerated laughter, was deafening. Viewers couldn't tell if it was meant to be a sick joke or something far more sinister. Immediately, the internet sleuths sprang into action. They had tolerated the uncanny images of the AI-generated child, but the video set alarm bells ringing. Who was this man? Was he Crazy Boy 69? What was the intent behind this disturbing content? The sleuths delved into the history of the account. Crazy Boy 69 had always maintained an air of anonymity. Attempts to trace IP addresses led to dead ends. The account frequently posted from VPNs, bouncing around various countries, making it impossible to determine a clear location, but there were other ways to investigate. One group analyzed the metadata from the video, trying to locate clues in the file itself. They hoped to find a geographical tag, a timestamp, anything that could help them. But, frustratingly, the metadata was stripped clean. Others scoured the internet for similar videos, attempting to match the man's face to known individuals. There was no match. The deeper they dug, the stranger things became. The online sleuths couldn't shake the feeling that this account was more than just a bizarre art project or a troll. There was something methodical, almost ritualistic, about the way the content evolved. From the realistic images of Alex to the warped depictions, and now the unsettling videos of the man. What was the purpose behind it? As the sleuths pieced together the puzzle, a few chilling theories began to emerge. Some believed that Crazy Boy 69 was run by a disturbed individual, possibly someone with a background in AI technology, who was using the platform to explore the boundaries of reality and fiction. The AI-generated child, the uncanny images, and the strange man were part of some grand psychological experiment meant to disturb viewers and provoke reactions. Others believed there was a more nefarious agenda at play. They feared that the man in the videos was grooming his audience, subtly normalizing disturbing content to desensitize viewers. The account's initial focus on child safety might have been a smokescreen, designed to attract concerned parents, only to lead them into something much darker. There was also speculation that the account could be part of a larger network, a digital front for a real-world operation. Some even suggested that Crazy Boy 69 had connections to illegal activities in the dark web, though no concrete evidence supported these claims. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain: Crazy Boy 69 was no longer just an odd internet anomaly. It was something far more sinister. As of today, Crazy Boy 69 remains an unsolved mystery. The account continues to post content, more videos of the man, more images of the increasingly warped Alex. But now the posts are less frequent, as if the account is winding down or moving on to a new phase. Authorities have been alerted, but without any solid leads or criminal activity that they can definitively prove, there has been little action. Law enforcement has advised the public to report the account if it crosses any legal boundaries, but for now, it remains a haunting online presence. Online sleuths, however, refuse to give up. They continue to track the account, diving deeper into the web, trying to uncover any clues about the identity of Crazy Boy 69. Some have begun to believe that the answer is right in front of them, hidden in the videos and images that have already been posted, but no one can say for sure. What is clear is that the danger is far from over. As long as the account exists, the threat it poses, whether psychological or physical, lingers in the background, and with each new post, the line between reality and fiction becomes more blurred. As the story of Crazy Boy 69 continues to unfold, the only question that remains is, who will uncover the truth, and what will they find when they do? The latest post from Crazy Boy 69 was uploaded just last week. It was a single, heavily distorted image of Alex, his face now.
The fourth floor.
In the heart of Hokkaido, amidst the rows of aging buildings and quiet streets, stands an ordinary-looking structure. At least, that's what it seems at first glance. Until the sun goes down on Wednesdays, the building, 3 stories tall by all accounts, becomes something else entirely after dark. If you ever pass by this building on a Wednesday night, be cautious. Many have said it is better to avoid the area entirely. For decades, strange and disturbing rumors have circulated about this place, rumors that are whispered in hushed tones, passed down from one wary resident to the next. Some say it's cursed, while others believe it's something far worse. The most unsettling part is that, to this day, no one really knows what happens there, nor can anyone explain the disappearances that have occurred over the years. It begins like this. Every Wednesday, once the sun has disappeared beyond the horizon, the building changes. No one sees it happen directly, it's subtle. By the time night fully settles, a 4th floor is said to appear, though no such floor exists during the day. The staircase leading to this mysterious floor seems to materialize out of thin air. One moment there's nothing, just the end of the 3rd floor. The next, a staircase spirals upward into the shadows. This staircase, locals say, is not of this world. It is the gateway to a place that no one who enters has ever returned from. People have been lured into climbing those stairs, that much is certain. But what happens once they ascend has never been fully understood. They vanish without a trace. Search parties find nothing, no bodies, no evidence. It's as if they are erased from existence itself. And here's where the story gets even stranger. Witnesses, those who have had the misfortune of passing by the building on a Wednesday night, report hearing voices as they walk by. But these aren't just any voices, they are personal, intimate. People have heard the laughter of a long-lost friend, the gentle call of a deceased parent, or the soft whisper of a lover they never thought they'd hear again. Each time, the voices seem to be calling from the upper floors of the building. From the 4th floor, the temptation, some say, is unbearable. To hear the voice of someone you thought you'd lost forever, to hear them beckoning you from the shadows, it's enough to drive even the most rational person into madness. And that's how it starts once someone steps into the building. Drawn by the voices, there is no coming back. Some accounts claim that the moment they cross the threshold, they are no longer truly part of this world. The doors to the building may remain open, the windows may still be visible, but the person themselves is lost, beyond reach, beyond rescue. It's been happening for years. Locals have long learned to avoid the place, especially on Wednesdays. The building stands empty during the day, but every so often you'll hear of another disappearance. A traveler unfamiliar with the legend might find themselves drawn in, or perhaps a skeptic who doesn't believe the warnings, but the result is always the same. There have been many attempts to investigate the building. Police, journalists, paranormal investigators, all have tried to uncover its secrets. Some go in during the day, finding nothing unusual apart from its dilapidated condition. But those who dare enter at night, especially on Wednesdays, have not been so lucky. Reports have surfaced of surveillance cameras placed around the building. The footage, however, only adds to the mystery. On Wednesdays, the recordings show peculiar glitches. People walking into the building, never to walk out again with no signs of struggle. There is a brief moment of static before the figure disappears, as if the building itself devours them. Strangely enough, the footage never captures the staircase, only the moments leading up to it. What makes the building even more unsettling is that there are no official records of it being constructed. Some say it's been there for centuries, long before the city of Hokkaido ever grew around it. Others claim the structure itself might not even exist in the physical sense, that it's some kind of spatial anomaly, a place where the lines between reality and something else are blurred. The list of the missing continues to grow. Some are local residents, others were curious tourists, but all of them shared the same fate. They vanished without explanation, leaving behind families and friends who were left with nothing but unanswered questions and the growing sense that the legend might hold more truth than anyone dare to believe. Those who have survived encounters with the building say it's not just the voices that haunt them, but a feeling, a deep, bone-chilling sensation that something ancient and hungry resides within those walls. They speak of shadows that move without light, of figures glimpsed in the corners of their vision that disappear when they turn to look. But above all, they speak of the overwhelming urge to climb the staircase, to see what lies beyond the third floor, even knowing that it leads to oblivion. But no one who has ever climbed the staircase has come back to tell their tale. The stories have spread far and wide, but not everyone believes them. After all, there's little solid evidence, just fragments of tales passed between generations, stories that sound like the work of overactive imaginations, yet the building still stands. It's said that if you approached the building on a Wednesday night, you might hear something that feels intimately familiar. But be warned, the voices are not what they seem. They are the bait. And once you set foot on that staircase, you will be lost, just like the others. No one knows what happens on the fourth floor, and perhaps it's better that way. There are places in this world not meant to be understood, places that do not abide by the rules of our reality. The building in Hokkaido is one of them. And the most dangerous part is that it looks like any other building, just another structure in a quiet city. But if you pass by on the wrong night, you may hear the call. And if you answer it, you'll never be heard from again. So if you ever find yourself walking the streets of Hokkaido after dark, and you hear a voice familiar, comforting, perhaps even loving, urging you toward that building, don't follow it, don't go near, and above all, don't climb the stairs, because once you do, there is no coming back.
The scream.
The house on the corner of Sycamore Street had been abandoned for years. Its windows were shuttered, its paint chipped and weather-beaten, and the weeds in the front yard grew unchecked, like the fingers of the earth creeping up to reclaim it. For months, the for sale sign swung lazily in the wind, ignored by passers-by, as though everyone instinctively knew to stay away. That is, until Chris and Diana came along. The couple, desperate for a new start, stood in front of the house, their two children, Vlad and Courtney, lingering near the gate. They needed a home, and this was the only one they could afford. Diana looked over the paperwork in the real estate agent's office earlier that week and froze at a strange detail. The previous owners, a family of 4, had shared the same names as them. Chris had laughed it off.
What are the odds?
He had said. Diana hadn't been able to shake the chill that settled in her bones. Now, standing in front of the house, it didn't seem so bad. They didn't have a choice. Anyway, money was tight, and this was their chance to start over.
It's just a house,
Chris muttered under his breath as he placed his arm around Diana. They told themselves it was nothing more than an eerie coincidence, one of those strange quirks of life that you can shrug off if you don't think about it too hard. The family moved in without fanfare. The house creaked and groaned with the weight of its history, but that was normal for an old home. That's what they told themselves. Vlad and Courtney explored the rooms, finding dusty corners and forgotten trinkets left behind by the previous owners. There were marks on the walls, faint as though someone had scratched at the paint. But when Courtney pointed them out to her mother, Diana dismissed it with a forced smile.
Probably the old family had kids too,
She said. By the time the first night fell, the family was settled into their respective rooms. Chris and Diana lay in bed, listening to the house settled. It sounds unfamiliar and unsettling in the quiet darkness. Vlad, in his room across the hall, stared at the ceiling, trying to ignore the strange feeling that someone or something was watching him. Courtney, the youngest at 8, snuggled into her bed, clutching her stuffed bear, the only comfort she knew in the vast, looming darkness. But the house wasn't silent for long. Vlad woke in the dead of night, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Something was wrong. The air in his room felt heavy, suffocating, like a thick fog pressing down on him. He sat up, the hairs on the back of his neck prickling as he scanned the room. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, a shadow in the corner, nothing more. But then the shadow moved. His heart pounded in his chest, and his breath itched in his throat. His face, Vlad's own face, stared back at him, but it was twisted, grotesque. Blood dripped from its mouth, and its eyes were sunken, hollow and black as the void. It whispered, its voice a rasp that clawed at his ears. Frozen in place, Vlad couldn't move. He wanted to scream, but something deep inside him, some primal instinct, warned him against it. But as the figure stepped closer, its mouth widening into a horrible, jagged grin, terror took over. He opened his mouth, and the scream ripped from his throat. The moment the sound left his lips, the figure lunged at him, its hands wrapping around his neck like cold iron. The scream was cut off abruptly, and in the silence that followed, Vlad's body fell limp to the floor. In the dark, the shadowy figure vanished, leaving only the echo of his scream hanging in the air. The next morning, Chris and Diana found Vlad's body. His face was twisted in terror, his eyes wide open and lifeless. They had no explanation, no way to understand what had happened. The coroner's report would later say natural causes, perhaps a heart attack brought on by fear, but that didn't make sense. He was only 12, too young for something like that. They tried to comfort Courtney, who had been too shaken to speak. She had heard something in the night, the sound of her brother's scream echoing through the house. Diana held her close, but nothing could ease the growing sense of dread that weighed on them all. That night, as they tucked Courtney into bed, Diana kissed her daughter's forehead and promised her that everything would be okay. But Diana didn't believe it. Not really. The house felt different now, darker, colder, like it was alive and watching them. Courtney lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her small hands gripping her stuffed bear. She told herself Vlad's death had been a freak accident, that there was nothing to fear. But as the night dragged on, she felt the weight of something pressing down on her. A low hum filled the room, a sound just at the edge of hearing. Then she saw it, a figure lurking at the foot of her bed. Her mother. No, not her mother. It looked like her, but the eyes were wrong. They were hollow and black, like Vlad's had been. The figure smiled, a slow, twisted smile that stretched too far. It whispered. Courtney's heart raced, her chest tightening with fear. She pulled the covers up to her chin, squeezing her eyes shut, hoping it would go away. But it didn't. It moved closer until it was standing right beside her bed, its cold breath brushing against her cheek. Her voice was small, trembling.
Mommy.
But no one answered. The figure leaned in, its face inches from hers, and in that moment, the terror overwhelmed her. She screamed, a high, piercing wail that filled the room. And just like Vlad, the moment the sound left her lips, the figure pounced. Courtney's scream was cut off abruptly, her small body going limp as the darkness swallowed her whole. The following morning, Chris and Diana were numb with grief, 2 children dead into nights. The house felt oppressive, like a living thing, its walls closing in around them. They didn't understand. The doctors couldn't explain it. The police had no answers. But Diana knew something was terribly wrong with the house. She spent the day combing through the papers they had signed when they bought the house. There, in the old records, she found it, a death certificate for the previous family, the ones with their same names. All 4 had died in the house, just like their children. She shared her findings with Chris.
It's the house.
She said, her voice trembling.
It's doing this to us.
At first, Chris didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable.
We have to leave,
he said. But as the day faded into night, they both knew it was too late. That night, they didn't sleep. They sat in the living room, clutching each other, waiting. They had figured it out. The house was feeding on their fear, on their screams. If they didn't scream, they wouldn't die. It was simple, in theory. But as the hours passed, the house grew darker, the air heavier. A deep, unnatural silence fell over the place, broken only by the creaks and groans of the old wood. Then it began. The shadows moved along the walls, taking shape. Vlad and Courtney, their dead children, stood before them, their eyes black and empty. Behind them, more figures appeared, distorted, ghostly versions of themselves, the previous family, their twisted faces locked in eternal screams. Diana gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle the sound. Chris squeezed her arm, his eyes wide with terror, but he didn't scream. They both knew what would happen if they did. The figures moved closer, their dead eyes boring into them, their mouths opening in silent screams. The air grew colder, the darkness pressing in on them like a weight. Diana's breath hitched, her body trembling with fear. The ghostly figure of Courtney stepped forward, her small hand reaching out, her face contorted in pain.
Mommy?
The figure whispered, her voice barely audible.
Why didn't you save us?
Diana bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. She couldn't scream. She couldn't. But the figure kept coming, its eyes locking with hers, the cold seeping into her bones. And then, without warning, Chris let out a choked sound, a small, involuntary gasp of horror. It was enough. The figures lunged at them, their mouths open in silent screams, and in that moment, The darkness swallowed them whole. Chris and Diana's bodies fell to the floor, lifeless, their faces twisted in silent terror. The house, now quiet once more, settled back into its uneasy slumber, waiting for the next family to arrive. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.